As the gaming industry moves forward, it is customary that older games are kinda left in the rearview mirror. And sometimes this might be for the best, as some games gain such a revered reputation that revisiting them actually only yields disappointment. However, others do manage to weather this storm and, on a replay, somehow manage to be even better than we all remembered. With that in mind then, I'm Josh from WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 video games that are even better than you remember. Number 10, The Simpsons Hit and Run. The Simpsons Hit and Run is often viewed through rose-tinged glasses, but the thing is, it actually does still rule if you play it today. The story is predictably wacky and the levels are all faithful to the show, but while it was drowned out by Rockstar's controversial offerings at the time, that's not really the case anymore in 2022. Grand Theft Auto games take years to develop, and The Simpsons Hit and Run is small and simple enough to feel unique to the series that inspired it. The Simpsons Hit and Run is not an easy game either, and the overwhelming and frustrating challenge it presented when you were a kid is now one of the key reasons it's even better today. As gamers get older, the difficulty is more of a draw than it once was, and the near impossible races that would consume whole days for younger players now just make it more interesting. Number 9, Duke Nukem 3D. The first-person shooter genre was brought to life by a handful of incredible titles in the early to mid-1990s. Wolfenstein 3D and Doom were pioneering projects for their time, but the evolution of the formula came thick and fast, and one of the games to carry the torch for the genre was Duke Nukem 3D. Duke 3D featured smooth gameplay, tight controls, and engaging level design, but was also unapologetic in its approach to comedy. The license is still known for its floozy, provocative nature, and the liberal amount of violence in the release only served to make it even more controversial. The IP was rebooted sometime later, but because the bitter taste of Duke Nukem Forever may still linger on the tongue of fans of the property, Duke Nukem 3D's innovation is often kind of forgotten. The 1996 title is still fun all these years later though, and more than suffices to scratch the Duke Nukem itch should it ever arise. Unless of course you got that itch off Duke Nukem himself, which, well, I'd just advise you get that checked out instead. Number 8, Batman Arkham Asylum. Batman Arkham Asylum is still widely believed to be one of the Caped Crusaders' best outings in gaming, but the impact that it has was drowned out by the sprawling landscape of Arkham City that released just 2 years later. And the latter game is rightfully praised for how it advanced the formula on a gameplay level, but what it gained in scope, it did lose in atmosphere. While returning to the Asylum then may feel restrictive in comparison to its successors from a mechanical standpoint, the claustrophobic setting and dense horror-inspired atmosphere are all part of its charm. And all these years later, it's perhaps even more impressive given the direction the franchise later went. Replaying Arkham City Origins or Night wield kinda similar. Batman never feels like the Predator like he does in later games, and so presents an entirely different vibe. Arkham Asylum is the start of something great, but it's also the end of something truly spectacular, even more so now that the series is finished. Number 7, Bioshock. Bioshock is rightfully considered to be one of the best games of its generation, even despite releasing in the packed calendar year of 2007. It's a game that puts the setting at the forefront of its story and presentation, and the truly unique first-person combat that is equally deserving of praise always seems to be a secondary thought for players. The reality is, though, that Bioshock is far from the typical first-person shooter that players have become accustomed to, and while Bioshock Infinite is also superb, that game falls into the trap of familiarity. Balancing the innovative gameplay with stunning, unsettling atmosphere makes the original Bioshock the best of the bunch, and its overt political themes and shocking twists have so much more impact all of these years later. To craft a story and world that's so dependent on political theories like libertarianism and objectivism, and make it as relevant 15 years after it released is a monumental achievement, and presenting it in a setting and with mechanics that are as good as they were in 2007 is even more impressive. Bioshock holds up beautifully, and its narrative feels even more weighted in 2022. Number 6, Dark Souls 2. With the recent release of Elden Ring taking the industry by storm, From Software can kinda do no wrong. The company's history as one of the industry leaders in melee combat design and crushing difficulty is known to so many, and games like Bloodborne, Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, and of course Dark Souls have reinforced that reputation through the years. However, there is one game that is not as revered as its counterparts. Dark Souls 2 is the black sheep of the original trilogy, as the first and third are seen as some of the best games in the genre. Despite being criticised on release though, Dark Souls 2 has so many gorgeous and interesting areas and characters that fit the series' immense quality and reputation. Scholar of the First Sin released just after the base game as well, and did well to iron out some of the kinks to make Dark Souls 2 a more well-rounded experience than it was when it first hit shelves. With great DLC to boot, bold mechanical changes, and nuggets of ideas that would be executed better in Elden Ring, Dark Souls 2 works so much better now that it's not in the immediate shadow of the original classic. Number 5, Wild Arms. The original PlayStation is rightfully revered as the golden age of Japanese role-playing games. From the now revived Valkyrie Profile series to the underappreciated Vagrant story, the system has a litany of offerings that have gone under the radar as a result of others casting too big a shadow. And Wild Arms is one such example, releasing only a few months before Final Fantasy VII. Because of this, it perhaps didn't get the reputation it deserved, especially as it straddles the difficult line between sprite-based and 3D polygonal aesthetics quite beautifully, ensuring it holds up better than any 3D JRPGs of the time. Developed by Mediavision, Wild Arms tells the story of Rudy Roughnight, a boy who has the ability to wield forbidden arm weapons that leave him isolated from the community that he grew up in. Along the way, he meets Cecilia and Jack, and the journey that unfolds is both heartwarming and challenging. Its 3 protagonists and retro visuals are unique in 2022, and while many fans are returning to Midgar after the success of Final Fantasy VII's remake, Wild Arms is, regrettably, destined for more years of obscurity that it simply doesn't deserve. Number 4, Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Imitation is the best form of flattery, and Castlevania Symphony of the Night, alongside Super Metroid, spawned a whole new genre, but none are as good as the 1997 pioneer. The gameplay is perfect, with Alucard moving with grace and poise, and the progression is suitably paced throughout the adventure. Aside from some resolution advancements that happen over time, it would be near impossible to tell that Symphony of the Night is 25 years old, as games like Axiom Verge, The Messenger, and Bloodstained Ritual of the Night all still look up to Konami's classic side-scroller for inspiration. In 2022, Symphony of the Night is still the best recommendation for players looking for something to play after those aforementioned titles. But one of the things that makes it even better than all those years ago is the way it looks. See, Symphony of the Night deploys stunning pixel art aesthetics that make even the most inconsequential areas feel iconic. The game is even prettier than you remember, especially as pixel art itself is increasingly rare in games today. Number 3, Persona 3. To many, the biggest and most significant leap in the Persona franchise was in 2017 with the worldwide release of the 5th mainline game. Persona 5 offered an experience that used the series' traditions to maximum effect, but as Persona's history stems back to the original PlayStation, Joker's journey through Tokyo wasn't the first to reinvent the JRPG wheel. Persona 3 in fact laid the groundwork for Persona 4 to develop upon, and 5 refined that in so many other ways. Be it on the PlayStation 2 or the PSP then, Persona 3 is a fantastic game as well as a fascinating history lesson, showing players just how the norms of Persona came to be. However, its darker tone and twisting story is so easy and enjoyable to experience, and complements the upbeat Persona 4 and incredibly stylish Persona 5 well. Consequently, Persona 3 is better than most would have you believe, and if you had the foresight to play it all those years ago, you'd probably know that it's even better now thanks to the stark contrast in tone that the later games showed. Number 2, Broken Sword Shadow of the Templars. One of the franchises that has been carrying the torch for the point-and-click genre is Broken Sword, releasing 5 mainline games since its debut in 1996. The first is perhaps the best though, and it's even better in 2022 when it arrived all those years ago. While it may have debuted on the original PlayStation, Broken Sword's stunning hand-drawn art style is radically different from the norm today, and the Disney-ish visuals always do well to keep the smile on players' faces. Broken Sword is better today though because it doesn't feel as old as it actually is, and the presentation still has the capability to turn heads, perhaps even more so now that the art style it uses isn't seen too often in the AAA space. Nostalgia simply isn't needed here, especially as the point-and-click gameplay is easy enough to be picked up and played on a whim. Number 1, Mass Effect. To many, Mass Effect is one of the best science fiction franchises in gaming, and developer BioWare's best achievement to date. In the game, Shepard and his eclectic band of unlikely crewmates embark on a quest to save the galaxy from a galactic threat, all the while grappling with the frustrating boundaries of Citadel space. Now, it is true that the original Mass Effect has aged, as its gameplay and visuals are clearly not as refined as later entries. However, the rhetoric online seems to be that it's not playable without a healthy amount of nostalgia, but the truth is that Mass Effect still holds up well despite its dated aesthetics. The story is sublime, and while the variety of characters that it houses is less than its sequels, Mass Effect more than makes up for it with a fully explorable universe full of so many tantalizing stories. In many ways, the 2007 original is the most satisfying of the PS3 Xbox 360 trilogy, as like Star Wars: A New Hope, it's self-contained and isolated enough to be enjoyable from start to finish, and birthed a whole new world in the process. Most of the annoyances that come from its age are wiped away as well by the Legendary Edition that came out in 2021, which is absolutely the definitive way to play this game, and modernizes it just enough. So, that's our list. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. Do you think these games hold up as much as I do? And are there any others that you would have preferred to see on here? Let me know, and while you're down there, could you please give us a like, share, subscribe, and head over to WhatCulture.com for more lists and news like this every single day. Even if you don't though, I've been Josh. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.